So where does this leave us? We have a pretty good handle on the large-scale movements. We have a fairly good idea, at least in terms of these kinds of ranges, of the time frames in which these things are happening. The late Pleistocene. The existence of founding lineages, the movement of people into the Americas south of the ice, right? And this one really here, this image here, I think really encapsulates kind of the time ranges that we're looking at. So if the ice-free corridor model doesn't work, and people are certainly not crossing the open South Pacific or the open Atlantic to arrive in the Americas, then the model that best accounts for the information that we have on hand is one that incorporates at least some significant portion of the movement into the Americas as having occurred along the coast. This does not mean that people were deep-sea blue water mariners crossing huge expanses of ocean. This views the coast, the coastline, that interface between land and sea and the range of different resources that exist there, as a corridor more than a barrier, right? Evidence has been rapidly accumulating over the last 15 years that would strongly suggest this idea, this model, can incorporate and explain a great deal of the information that we have to hand right now. Sites all along the coast of British Columbia, the United States, Mexico, Peru, Chile, are beginning to show that there is a strong pattern of very early occupation, contemporary with, if not older than, the Clovis sites in the interior. Here are some of the artifacts from Triquet Island in British Columbia, dating to 14,000 years ago. And here's actually a view of the island itself today. Further south, you have the archaeological sites in the Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California, including that of Arlington Springs Woman, a set of human remains dating to around 13,000 years ago, contemporary with the mammoth hunters in the interior, but she was out here on Santa Rosa Island. Back then, you didn't have a cluster of small islands. You had one large Santa Rosa Island, and at a very early date, maybe right at the tail end, or right at the very, very beginning of human entry, there would have been Santa Barbara Island in the middle of the channel, although it would always have been low-lying and windswept. And you can see where the present-day coastline would have been on the mainland there as well. So these islands would have been much closer to the mainland than they are today, relatively speaking, in terms of open water crossing. Here are some of the earliest sets of artifacts from those Channel Islands, often associated with what is referred to as the Paleo-coastal tradition. These small barbed points and crescents there in the middle, very diagnostic for this time period. Another interesting thing is that at the time of human arrival, you would have had pygmy mammoth on Santa Rosa Island, that big island. You can see here excavations of one such individual. And here is a reconstruction of what Mammuthus axilis would have looked like in life in terms of relative size. Here you can see excavations of another example of a slightly larger individual from an earlier time period before the population on the island went through the process of the dramatic reduction in size. And here you can see represented on the larger map of the Greater California Bight to show you the relative position to the Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, San Diego portion, and then the portion along the northwest Baja California coast, ending in Punta Eugenia and Isla Cedros at the southern end. Isla Cedros, where I've worked for over 20 years now, that also contains sites dating to the terminal Pleistocene. Further south along the Baja California Peninsula, we also have evidence for very early occupation and very early focus on marine and coastal resources. This is Espiritu Santo Island in Baja California Sur, where much of the work has been done by Mexican National Institute of Anthropology and History archaeologist Harumi Fujita. You can see some of the early fish hooks that she's found from early Holocene, terminal Pleistocene levels at the sites there on Espiritu Santo. And here you can see Isla Cedros, Baja California. Map showing some of the archaeological sites, though not all of them, that we have located over the last 20 years. And here you can see a selection of some of these artifacts: fishing weights, fishing hooks, flaked shell tools used as scrapers, and knives, all strongly demonstrating a technological focus on the harvesting of marine resources, which is not something that you would expect from people who were specialized big game hunters in the interior of the continent. This represents a parallel, at minimum, tradition to that of the interior megafauna hunting groups that were occupying North America at the same time as these groups were occupying Isla Cedros. It's hard to see them as being descended one from the other, much more likely that they represent sister populations descended from some common ancestor a couple of thousand years further back. In the next portion, in the next lecture, you will see a more complete expression of this idea of the coastal migration. But in the meantime, take a look at this video associated with this lecture, and keep in mind that it has been only in the last 20 to 25 years that these ideas have changed so dramatically, that we have altered our views of the prehistory of the Americas so much that we're now in a phase of intense investigation and a lot of work going into trying to figure out where the best places to look for more data to test these new ideas would be. Because remember, just because you have a new idea, if you haven't tested it with strong, well-documented data, it's still just an idea. But it's an exciting time to be studying and researching this particular question in archaeology.